All right, good evening. Welcome to episode number 11 of Before the Train Wreck, joined again by Dr. Sean T. Smith. Welcome, Sean.
How you doing, Rich?
Good. Just quickly comment in the notes. I want to know if it's working tonight because last week it didn't switch over in video. Did you guys see Sean there when he talked? Just let me know real quick. Tonight's episode is the general topic is on the subject of feminism. But I think it's obvious that feminism is a red flag when it comes to sexual marketplace and getting involved with women. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on it. Sean did a really good video on how feminism makes women unhappy and undateable, which I will link in the live chat right now. So if you're watching the replay, make sure you check out the live chat. Sean, can you distill that video and why that is significant?
Yeah, I made that video because I'm so many cases I've seen in my office where couples will come through and feminism has just infected their relationships. These gender studies classes and a lot of these humanity courses are starting to be called grievance studies. And I think that's a very apt name for them because I've seen several young ladies who were happy, upbeat, chipper, enjoying life until they went to college, started taking some gender courses studies, and they got convinced that the world is against them and that they should be angry at the world. And it's really, I think, a horrible thing to do to a young woman. But that's what universities are doing these days. And you can't go into a relationship with the mindset that the world is against you. And if you're a guy, you should not be dating somebody who has this mindset, because if she believes that she's oppressed by the world and she's taken on this mindset that she's a victim, then sooner or later you are going to be cast in the role of oppressor. And it happens like clockwork, and it's a disturbing thing to watch. So I sent you a little article here today. Did you get this, Rich?
Yeah, let me grab the article real quick. It was a list of grievances, or basically a way, or a list of 106 ways a woman can be victimized by culture, society, the patriarchy, men, depending on, it's 160 plus.
Yes, 106. That's the amateur version. She went professional and she did 167, actually.
Yeah, let me just post that in the chat for you, but go ahead.
Yes, woman, Maisha Johnson at Everyday Feminism. She apparently sat around for a while and came up with 167 ways that she's oppressed by a woman. And I read through some of them. There's no way I could stomach the whole list. And I'll give some credit to some of them. Like, I think number 54, she's talking about how women have to be mindful of their safety. And her exact words are, if you're a man, you don't have to carry a lifetime of both constant risks to your safety and a constant doubts that you're telling the truth about it. That's clearly overstated, but I think it would be dishonest to say that women don't have to worry about their safety more than men. Now, of course, men have to worry about dying sooner in every single age group, and 96% of workplace deaths are men. But this is a fair point. The women can't walk down the street without having to have their head on a swivel, which doesn't explain why anybody would walk down the street with a phone in their face. That always troubles me. But then there are other things like let's see, what is it? Where's the one about pockets? There's one in here where she's talking about, okay, number 12. You can buy clothes designed for your gender, if you're a man, that have pockets you can actually use. Clothes meant for women are often focused on being slimming, not purely decorative pockets, and purely decorative pockets are common, sorry. And so what she's saying, this is a new thing that's showing up online, is that women are oppressed because they don't have pockets in their clothes. And there was even a Vox video, not Fox, but Vox with a V, a Vox video saying about this supposedly educational video talking about how depriving women of pockets is historically a way that men keep women down and keep them subjugated. And I went on Amazon today and I looked around, and you can get cargo pants for women, and some of them actually look kind of nice. But point here is that if you're dating somebody, you come across somebody who is so focused on being a victim that they think something like pockets are a tool of the patriarchy to keep them down, you should run. But I think the beauty of the article, and I think guys actually should look at this article, because it gives you a nice vetting tool. So if you're getting to know a woman for the first time, you can throw something out like, oh, I saw this video on Vox about pockets and women's clothes. And if she buys into this idea that she's being victimized because of her pockets, this is a really nice test. So if you just throw it out there in a neutral tone and see how she responds to it, that's a nice little Rorschach test to see where she stands. Yeah. Ideally, she would laugh at it.
Hopefully, yeah. And, kind of the point that I wanted to segue into was, the fact that not all feminists show up with short purple hair with face piercings and sleeve tats and 17 cats. Some of them are quite covert. And this author that wrote this article, I just clicked on her. She doesn't have a picture when you click on her author link, but if you Google her name, she's pretty attractive.
Yeah, she's a lovely lady. I hope that's probably a very sexist thing for me to say, but yeah, she's cute.
Yeah, I mean, like, she's not unattractive. She doesn't have purple hair. I mean, her hair's short, but they don't always come with, like a card carrying um, or like a tag that says, "Hi, I'm a feminist." I mean, I've been in a relationship with a feminist before. Have you ever been there, Sean?
I was in a relationship with a girl who's not a feminist, but her family were hardcore feminists, and that was enough for me. I mean, I really like this girl, but I could not tolerate her family.
Yeah, you can't see them coming usually, and I didn't really think much of it because I mean I've always been, this is my plugged in sort of condition, but I've always been programmed to believe that women that do the work and want certain things would be good. So I suppose at the time I was a little bit disillusioned, but very attractive woman. Like she was definitely a 9 or a 10, depending on who would do the assessment. Long hair, feminine physique, very curvy, but also still very, very feminist as the relationship went on. Didn't need a man. One of the things that would often come up would be the competing element of it. And I was talking to you before we went live. I'm still working on this book, and one of the chapters I was working on earlier this week was the red flag chapter, and I added the red flag when she's competing with you or when she tries to compete with you, because it implies that she thinks that she's better than you, because if she's going to compete with you and try to do better than you in many areas of life that are in the masculine, it suggests that she doesn't think very highly of you, is what my impression of it is. Now, I'm still editing the final components of that section of the red flags, but there's not always obvious signs that she's going to be a feminist, right? Have you ever noticed anything that's not that obvious that you've come to realize afterwards that would be problematic or a red flag?
Yeah, just the way they talk about the world. If they speak in terms of being oppressed and they use the social justice language and
Yeah.
talking about your privilege and so forth, and coming at you with educating you, they're gonna educate you about your privilege and let
Lecturing
you know
you, about that. Yeah.
yeah, and shame. And I think that's something that Rollo talks about a lot is uh, the shaming that can come along with stuff like this. So yeah, those sort of things really stand out when you start to notice them and you cue in on them. And that's why I think articles like this one by Maisha Johnson, they're a gift, because if you're a guy and you read through this dispassionately, this is really giving you a nice tool for vetting women.
Definitely. I'm just going to link the join link just to kind of get things moving. We're not going to get to the questions this very moment, but just as a reminder, fellows, the show is about before the train wreck. Sean and I was kind of having a drink one night, and we're collaborating over the idea of trying to get to guys before they make a mess of their lives. I know a lot of people come to the stuff that we talk about as a result of trauma, something that happened that derailed them, that woke them up, that led them to see that things were not as they were told that they are. So rather than help clean up the train wreck, I'd rather spend some time on the show, the 90 minutes anyway. Sean and I both agree that we want to spend the time on helping you avoid train wreck. So if you have a red flag, a scenario that you'd like to talk about, maybe an experience you want to share that would help others avoid a train wreck, the join link is there. I'll continue to post it throughout the broadcast as long as there's room. If you're clicking it from a Chrome browser, it should launch immediately. If you're doing it from a mobile device, like a tablet or a phone, Hangouts is native on an Android. If you have an iOS, you'll have to download Google Hangouts. So there's a link there. I'm just going to share it. You guys can pile in and ask questions when we hop over to that. What other elements of feminism do guys need to be aware of that could be problematic for them in a long-term relationship? One area that I noticed, actually, to kind of answer that question before I go back to you, was I was coaching a guy a couple of weeks ago, and he was getting divorced, and he was trying to minimize the fallout of the divorce. And we dealt with some interesting components, but one of the things that became obvious was I thought I was dealing with a feminist. And when we kind of went down that component of the conversation, it turned out that he married somebody that came from an unbroken home, good family that went to church, God-fearing Christian was, I think, how he described it. card-carrying conservatives. But when she was relying on family law on the exit, when she was untying the knot because she was leaving him, a lot of her behavior was very feminist. It was very, I'm the woman, so I deserve this, that, and the other thing because I've been victimized, I've been oppressed. So it was interesting to note that he didn't have this belief when he got married to her, but it's something that kind of evolved throughout the course of the marriage, and especially during the divorce, was exceptionally obvious. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, far be it for me to ever come to the defense of feminism as an ideology, but if there was a situation where she was increasingly throughout the marriage beginning to feel that she was being treated unjustly, I guess my question would be, where did that come from? Did that come from him? Did that come from ideology that she was exploring? Did it come from both? I mean, was he treating her unjustly throughout the marriage? But then the other side of that is that it would be, I think, very tempting as you're going through the divorce process if you start to see that the system is really there to benefit you and there's a lot that you can cash in on. It would be tempting and hard to resist, I think, if you are already angry and bitter and you feel like your world's been turned upside down, to see an advantage and not just want to take it.
Yeah, I think that women are opportunistic by nature. I mean, this is kind of widely regarded. It's not an insult to women, or it's not disparaging or anything. It's just, without opportunism, they wouldn't be able to optimize their hypergamy. I mean, it's kind of hardwired into finding the best provisioning guy they can get, right? So for things in family law to be written there specifically or exclusively to benefit the feminine, it's kind of to be expected. I mean, you'll see a God-fearing Christian that was a card-carrying conservative on the exit perhaps lean this way and try to leverage the benefits that have been written in family law in that sense. And there's really not a lot that you can do to spot that, I don't think. Like, this guy really did not see this one coming. And I mean, I'll be honest, like, I don't know him that well. I only talked to him for about an hour and 15 minutes or so. But, from what I gathered, straight up guy, wife just met somebody from work. They had a fling on a business trip, and she decided to untie the knot and run him through the ringer and take everything that she possibly could on the exit. Went from the sweet, loving wife, God-loving Christians, sort of thing, to somebody that was just trying to destroy him. I don't know how you can spot for that, though. Like, aside from the obvious things that we talked about here, vetting for that would be hard.
Well, I think one of the main things to vet for, if you're trying to weed out this feminist ideology, make sure that it doesn't infect your relationship, is early on in the relationship, you're looking for somebody who has a solid internal locus of control. You're looking for somebody who just never blames other people for her circumstance. And yes, there are lots of women out there who don't do, who take accountability for their own existence and their own careers and their own friendships and relationships. And that's the antidote to feminism. Like, feminism is not going to be particularly attractive to somebody who doesn't want to waste their time pissing and moaning about the pockets on their jeans. I mean, can you imagine having that kind of time in your life where this is a problem? You have to be actively seeking out things to be upset about. And the woman who's actively seeking out things that she can manage and improve and control, that's a much better prospect. But the other thing that comes to mind when you're telling the story about the guy is that, having worked with so many couples over the years, that sometimes the situation will unfold such that I meet with one person and then I meet with the other person individually. And actually, I do that quite a bit. Usually I will meet with a couple first, and then I'll meet with each of them individually, and then we'll start working as a couple again. But one of the things that's just fascinating is, and it's a nice diagnostic tool for me, is when one person is telling the story from their point of view, and then they leave, and then the other person comes in and they tell the story from their point of view, and it's like they're talking about two entirely different worlds. A good sign is when each one will tell the same story. They're telling it from their point of view, but you can tell that they're on the same page about what the problem is, and they're not too much exaggerating the other person's behavior and so forth. But when you see somebody who says, well, it was everything that they did that caused this to fall apart, and then the other person comes in and they say the opposite, and it's kind of jarring sometimes to recognize that these two people telling the same story are actually in the same relationship, because they're so far disconnected from each other. So when this guy's talking about how she feels like she was being treated unjustly, I wouldn't jump to the conclusion that, yeah, he's right. I mean, from his point of view, maybe he doesn't see that he's treated her unjustly, but maybe she has a legitimate complaint there. I don't know.
How do you spot for that, though? Like, if somebody's talking about watching a totally different movie than you. Like somebody references or describes Coming to America with Eddie Murphy, and then the other partner talks about another movie that just came out in the theater, like Captain Marvel, and they're trying to describe the exact same movie, right? But they're talking about two different scenarios. Like, how do you look out for that?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is like I talk about in the Tactical Guide to Women. I talk about clarity is one of the things that you really need to vet for in women, and clarity is just the ability to see a situation accurately and put some words to it. Now, ideally, if you're a guy who is working on this stuff and you're trying to grow like I'm trying to grow, then you have a pretty clear view of what's going on, including what you're bringing to the situation. And that's something that she should have too. Like she should be able to clearly identify what's going on, what the issue is, what her role is in it. And, there's never any guarantee that that quality is going to last for a lifetime, but it's definitely something to be looking for.
There's no doubt that we all reserve the right to change our mind at any given time, but women do it often during the exit on a divorce. We're going to switch gears in a minute and take some, I guess, link-ins or hangout joins from people that have a question they want to drop on us or a scenario they want to vet for a red flag. Let me drop the link in there again. Again, it's before the train wreck, so join us with questions or scenarios that you want to vet to avoid a train wreck. Before we hop into that, tactical soap, like the Tactical Guide to Women. I should have both of those there, right? Side by side. Tactical soap, Tactical Guide to Women. What do you think?
Man, you'd be set for life.
So if you want to vet women, grab this book. If you want to smell good and support the creation of content on this channel, there's a link in the description for the Tactical soap. Check out with coupon code Cooper. You get a discount on it. Links there, guys. If you want to join us, you got a scenario you want to vet. It's the Hangout. You're going to do it either from a mobile device. You'll need Google Hangouts if you're on iOS. If you're on Android, it's native. Or just click that link from a Chrome browser, and it should open up nice and easy.
So, not to interrupt you.
Go.
Yeah. Rolo just popped in here with a comment, in quotes, "We're working on our relationship" means, apparently a woman saying this, he's trying his best to be who I think I want him to be. So when he says we're working on a relationship, when she says we're working on a relationship, that means he's trying to change to suit her. And yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that I'm thinking about that statement because I've heard that statement before, and there is there certainly are women who are trying to shape him, and then there are women who are trying to actually work on the relationship, and they do use a different kind of language, because women who are actually trying to work on the relationship and their end of things will talk about what they're trying to do to change things.
Yeah, well, they tell men and women very different things when it comes to what to do. When it comes to relationships, they always tell men, you got to do what's right. They tell women, well, you do what's right for you, girl.
Yeah, and my profession is horrible about this because my profession is absolutely gynocentric. Like women are the standard that relationships are compared to, and there's no, well, I shouldn't say there's no, but there's not much recognition for the way men do relationships, and we do them well too. We just do them a little bit differently. But yeah, women are held up as a gold standard, and men are essentially defective women. Done.
We got somebody that joined us. Al, you can unmute yourself if you want to ask that question now. Go ahead. Al, I don't know if you can hear us. I got you muted. So when you guys join, I'm going to mute you just so you don't, so your audio doesn't clip in. I'll let you figure that out while you're sitting there. But there's on the bottom of your screen, there's a line through the microphone. You should be able to unmute yourself. You can also post questions in the chat too, guys, if you want. Let me get you that link again to join. Boom. There it is right there. What about a bipolar feminist? I think a bipolar anything is going to be a pain in the ass. You have a bipolar feminist, you're dealing with some extra layers of problem right there.
Yeah, no, I'm not laughing. I'm not laughing at the mental disorder. It's just kind of it's not the best of both worlds there.
That's hilarious. What about a bipolar feminist? What about a bipolar socialist Nazi feminist? What about that? Oh, man. Valen, you can ask a question if you want. I'm not sure if Al can unmute himself, but go ahead.
What about that? Valen, you can ask your question if you want.
Do you have headphones? You might want to throw them in. It sounds like you're getting feedback. Okay, he's just muted himself. I guess they'll figure that out.
Hello?
Yes, hi.
I wanted to give my insight on something that happened to my friend at school.
Okay, fire away.
was pretty bipolar, actually.
Okay. Is there a question? Something you want to talk about?
It's more of a story.
Okay.
Insight for future men.
Go ahead. Fire away.
So pretty much this dude, my friend, he was dating this girl for around a year. A hardcore feminist. Yeah.
You're getting audio feedback playing from your device somewhere. I don't know if you got two things running there, but you gotta mute the audio on the actual YouTube broadcast because it's delayed.
Oh shit.
So just mute that audio and you can talk to us directly. Okay.
No, I had the video running.
Yeah. So just mute that video. And, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, the video's paused. So pretty much my friend was dating this girl for around a year, and she just decided to break up with him and made this very elaborate story about how his patriarchy forced her into various situations. Like in class, she said he tried to rape her. All because he told her that feminism was bullshit.
Okay. And then she pulled the patriarchy card, like he tried to rape her?
She tried to bring him to court.
Was there a Me Too scenario with this? Like what happened?
No. Well, she used to, in class, the teachers had to tell him to get off of him because she used to sit on him and try to make out with him. And then she comes, pulls the cards and he tried to rape me in class.
So because he told her that he thought feminism wasn't a productive use of time,
yeah,
she lashed out this way.
Yeah.
There you have it, fellas. Any woman that comes off with any kind of feminist red flags or signals is going to be problematic for you. I mean, at any given time they can completely turn on you. And this is a prime example.
Yeah, let's talk about how they can.
Even 18 yet.
Yeah, let's talk about how they can turn on you. That when a person rehearses a thought over and over again that they've been victimized or that they're being mistreated, and they're hearing that and they're saying that and they're hearing themselves say that, they're rehearsing a thought that eventually they have to start to believe in order to avoid what's called cognitive dissonance, which is where you start to feel kind of bad and tense because your thoughts and your behaviors aren't matching up. So anytime somebody spends enough time thinking that they are being victimized, they're either going to have to create some victimization to make their behavior match up with their thoughts, or they're going to have to change their thoughts so that, again, their behavior and their thought are consistent.
So what happened after she lashed out? You said that she tried to take him to court?
Oh yeah, she tried to take him to court. She brought him, because I'm in high school now. She brought him to the principal and the behavior technician at my school, and she made him change classes. She almost got him expelled with no proof.
Yeah. I mean, stuff like this can happen. I mean, I was at the gym a few weeks ago, and this kid at the gym recognized me, and he just said, hey, thanks for all your stuff. I wanted to tell you this little quick story. And he was telling me how he was talking to this girl. He looked like he was in his early 20s, maybe 20, 21 or so. And, he was complimenting her on something that she was wearing. And she responded with, your toxic masculinity and the patriarchy is not allowed to talk about those things with me. And he just turned around and walked away. Didn't want anything to do with it. He just spotted the red flag immediately and did not engage in the conversation. So, I mean, this is a dynamic that women are going to bring on themselves. I mean, men are just going to choose to disengage. I mean, men that are aware anyway are going to choose to disengage from this kind of nonsense and just basically walk from it. More of the blue pill betas will probably placate to it and try to pander to them and say, "Oh yeah, you're right. Masculinity is toxic. It's terrible." By the way, speaking of toxic masculinity, you'll notice in the merch store, I just added a T-shirt to it today that says "Masculinity is so toxic, feminists will cry." I've ordered mine, so if you want it, it's right there. You can grab a copy for yourself. Wear that to the gym, wear that to classroom, have some fun with it if you want. Thanks for sharing that story, Valen. Appreciate it.
Yeah, disengaging is the right way to go. And you're right. There are guys who would give into the guilt trip and try to placate. And then there are other guys who would get engaged by trying to dispute it. Neither one is, why waste your time in either direction? Just walk away. I mean, whoever that was, he did the right thing.
Yeah, life is way too short. Elle, did you figure out the audio? You're still on with us on the Hangout, but if you want to take the mute off, you can ask your question if you got something. It's not just for hanging out and listening to the show. You want to listen to it from the view side. I just want to keep this section of the Hangout open for people that are asking questions. Posted the join link again there for you guys. If you have a experience story to share, preferably you want to avoid a train wreck, spidey senses are tingling, something's going on, a scenario you want to vet. You've got Dr. Sean and myself on tonight for about another hour or so. I'm gonna let El go because he's not asking a question. I think he's just watching. It's not a watch link, guys. It's a join link. So make sure you come on with a question.
Let me ask you about this. Jordan Baker says, thankfully, I have found that many women that say they are feminist are still reasonable people. Only few women are hardcore extreme types. What do you think about that?
I don't think there's any reasonable feminists that I've met. I've met women that have implied that they're reasonable as a feminist, but it's a supremacist movement, you know, as far as I can see. It's not there to equalize a playing field. You did a video at one point that was talking about the different like levels and layers of feminism. And like we've talked about this with MGTOW before, where there's like guys that completely disconnect from the sexual marketplace, don't deal with women on the social level whatsoever. They buy dolls and that's kind of their solution to the problems. They're the guys that just limit their engagement or won't get married or live with a woman on the other end of the spectrum. But the same thing I think is true of feminism. Like you've got these hardcore, what does Milo Yiannopoulos call them? Ham beasts. You know, he has a funny term for them. That will go in and protest like Jordan Peterson's talks and pull fire alarms and dye their hair bright purple and red and pierce their face and all kinds of stuff. And then there's the ones that basically got off the bandwagon when women acquired the right to vote and drive a car and, you know, stuff like that. And they all got equal pay for doing the same job, which women have right now. So I think that it's very ingrained in society as a whole. I think it's affected everybody. I think it's affected all women to some degree. I mean, I've never met a woman that's not been affected by feminist ideology and the toxicity of it. When they need to rely on it, they can and would rely on it if it does benefit them. So if I can kind of sum it up like that, what do you think?
Well, I use the terms that Christina Hoff Sommers uses. She uses gender feminists. Those are the hardcore pulling the fire alarm type feminists, and then equity feminists. And I got chewed out because I used these terms in a video, and equity feminism is not a great term because it implies equality of outcome. But that's the term that Summers uses. That's a term that I use, and it's the belief that women and men should have equal opportunity, not necessarily equal outcomes. And I think it does divide pretty neatly along those two lines. But one of the things that I have noticed is that most people who call themselves feminist, they haven't been to campus, they haven't taken gender studies classes, they haven't really plugged into what that term means. Most of them seem to really have no idea what they're saying when they say, I'm a feminist. They think it means equal opportunity, when it really means equality of outcome and female supremacy. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. I think most people just don't know what the term means.
Yeah, there's a lot of fog of war around the definition for sure. I mean, you could ask 10 different people and probably get 10 different definitions of what it means. Got a super chat here from Jay. Want to say thank you. He says, what do you do if your own family is largely feminist? How do you handle that dynamic with a potential mate? I'm red pilled and I have 4 sisters. I've had this conversation and this question come up a number of times. I think guys in my community have posted this before. You're gonna have some differences of opinion with family from time to time when it comes to ideologies and value. You just have to kind of disconnect from them. I mean, you're not going to impose your beliefs on them, just as they don't need to impose their beliefs on you. Let them vote for whatever political party they want to support. You vote for whatever political party you want to support. Because they're Democrats, you don't have to vote Democrat. I mean, you just don't get involved in these sorts of conversations when it comes to family gatherings, because it's just not going to go anywhere. It's going to create conflict and animosity and all kinds of problems. I don't know. Like, what do you think, Sean?
Yeah. Is Jay worried that if his girlfriend gets around his sisters that feminism is going to infect her? It's not an unreasonable fear. It is a contagion.
Well, I think it would be something that you'd want to pay attention to. Like if you're dating somebody for a while, she comes over for Thanksgiving or Christmas or some family event or a barbecue or something like that, and she starts chatting up your sister, and your sister starts talking about the patriarchy, and she's sitting there with her ears perked up talking about something that might have happened in university or college that left her scathed or victimized. I think that would be a red flag. I mean, that's probably a pretty good way to vet somebody, is put them in a room with a feminist and see what they do.
Yeah, she's going to buy into it or she's going to laugh at it.
Yeah, that's what I would use it for.
Yeah.
Yeah, use that to check out the girls that you're dating to see if they're worth long-term basis or not.
Yeah, I agree. Don't treat it as a handicap. Treat it as an opportunity to test.
Yeah, you're not being handcuffed with that one. That's actually a bit of a benefit. Although I would imagine it would get draining if every time you're with family they're talking about victimization and the patriarchy destroying things or whatever. Let me put the join link here again for you guys. Again, join with questions, red flags you want to vet. We're going to be on till for another hour. Click it from a Chrome browser. It should open up nice and easy, or from a mobile or tablet. Hangouts is native on Android, so you'll have to download it for iOS. Got any other questions here we missed? Let me ask you this question. What do you think? Where do you think feminism is going?
That'd be a concern. That's the same guy that did the super chat, but there's some kind of question in here about dealing with feminism in my profession, and I can't quite suss out what the question is.
Who wrote it?
So maybe somebody can type it.
Or can you read it out?
Yeah, I don't know. There's a couple people have referred to this question, I think, that was being asked, and I can't find the original question.
Okay, well, maybe we got to retype it out. I'll have to put the chat on slow mode maybe next time because it's filling up quick. Guys, there's over 400 people watching, 84 likes. Hit that thumbs up. Let YouTube know that this stuff is useful, and they should be showing it to people that subscribe to the channel. Just do me a quick favor and hit that like button. A feminist will cry somewhere when you do it, I promise you. Let's see what other questions we got here. Oh, so back to the question that I just posed to you, Sean. Where do you think feminism is going? Like, what is your assessment of the sexual marketplace, the political landscape, the direction that it's heading now? Do you think it's going to continue to get worse? Is it getting better? What do you see?
I'm a lot more optimistic than most people in the manosphere. I think that reasonable people get turned off by unreasonable positions. And we had this war of the sexes in the 60s. And I know it's an ongoing war. Some people are still fighting this war, but what happens when somebody wins a war, which feminists essentially won a war back then, and that was a good thing on a lot of counts. Most reasonable people then said, oh, cool, we won the war. I'm going to go home and live a normal life. And the people that stay behind and keep fighting the war are this filtered group of nutcases that are still fighting a war that doesn't exist. It's like the Japanese soldiers that were trapped on an island and didn't know that the war was over. And I don't know how much of this is Gilligan's Island versus, I think there was actually a couple of guys that.
No, this is a true story. Yeah, it's a true story. Yeah.
And so they're still fighting a war.
No,
they just didn't know that the war was over. But you always have nutcases that keep fighting the war after it's over. And you have this concentrated, distilled group of nuts in feminism that think they're still fighting a war.
Yeah. And that's kind of what war brings you, though, right? I mean, like, if you look at the history of conflict and military, and I love that kind of stuff because I've studied a ton of it. But Second World War, there was divide between East and West Germany, the Soviets on one side, the Allies on the other side. And, they occupied that land for a long period of time. Even with this whole thing, with the Persian Gulf, with the Americans and, we're going to smoke them out of their caves and weapons of mass destruction. It's only recently that they've just, started to pull out troops, really, to the extent where, the presence really isn't even that significant anymore, or it's been wiped away clean. But these wars ended a long time ago, right? I mean, Osama bin Laden's gone, Saddam Hussein's gone, Gaddafi's gone, right? But I mean, there's still occupation, there's still presence. They still find ways to manufacture reasons to spend time in those environments. So I think that's partially human nature, but at the same time, me personally, I don't see an end to this feminist crap.
No, I don't either. And
I see people declaring some of the weirdest things, like I'm going to destroy feminism, or they go on this mission to do like this sort of nonsense. Dude, it's not happening. Like, you just gonna have to learn to accept it is what it is, and you're gonna have to live within what it is and understand the dynamics of it and just navigate accordingly. Got a super chat here from Davy. Too risky to spin plates if she's a feminist. I guess he's asking, is it too risky to date a feminist when you're dating other women? I don't see why that would be a problem if you just, make it clear that you're not exclusive. I mean, you don't have to declare that you're non-exclusive, but you also don't have to declare exclusivity. But why would you want to spend a great deal of time with a feminist anyway? I mean, if you recognize that, she's got red flags and she's potentially a feminist, let it go. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, what's the upside? I guess the upside is I guess the upside is sex. That would be the obvious one, but there's so much downside there. Why would you waste your time when there are other options?
Yeah,
So,
Rollo's in the chat there. He says, why, if you have other women, why date a feminist? Probably a
right.
lack of options, maybe some scarcity there.
Yeah.
If you're going to school or college or university, you're probably going to find that a good chunk of the population probably shares some feminist ideologies, and you're going to have to take one for the team or suck it up and maybe add them to your plate rotation, I would imagine.
Yeah, this is why I say guys should not be dating on campus. It's just not worth the risk. You can go across the street. There's nothing on that campus that you can't get across the street. That's a lot safer.
Yeah.
Somebody asked a question. This is the question I was looking for, Sean T. Smith. The question was how to proceed in psychology on your field that's highly feminist. So I guess they're asking, how do I function, or how does a non-feminist psychologist function in a field that's overrun by feminism? Well, I make videos and I complain about it and I laugh at it. That's what I do.
Did you find that it was obvious to you when you were going through post-secondary education? Like you were like, wow, there's a lot of feminist talk going on here, or is it just recently that's kind of become obvious to you?
Oh God, yeah. It was horrible when I was in graduate school, and it's only gotten worse. But, when I was in graduate school, I was doing clinical work and I was in a clinical program. So I could really just keep my head down and go out into the prisons and wherever I was working and just do the work. And when you're in an actual environment like a prison or wherever you're working, dealing with real problems, there's not a lot of room for just bizarre ideologies like feminism.
Yeah. There's a super chat here. Thank you for that. Hingle McCringle Berry. How do you respond to friends or people that use shame tactics and say who hurt you, or you're just bitter when they learn about your views? Well, that's my morning every morning when I go into my Google Analytics and I look at the comments, dude. It's like, it's always some shaming tactic, or you're bitter, or you don't know how to pick women, or I just turn around on them. Like, I don't get a lot of who hurt you. But whenever there's like a point and sputter at me, I, for the most part, ignore it. But if they've taken the time to write like a long ass essay, I'll give them those 3 words. Who hurt you? Sure, why not? I just laugh at it. I think it's entertaining.
Yeah.
I don't get that in your videos?
No, I don't get a lot of that.
You'll get it soon enough.
I don't think my videos are particularly bitter. I mean, my videos are sometimes very pointed. The APA would probably say I'm bitter, but
they will find a way to either weaponize it or find some different component that is going to labeled as bitter as you kind of, get through there. Rollo's got a question for you. So, Sean, do you risk your license to practice if you go against the APA's ruling on traditional masculinity?
If I don't follow the guidelines, no, there's no enforcement mechanism in the guidelines, so I can ignore the guidelines. Where I'm risking my license potentially, I don't know how real this threat is, but my license comes up for renewal every 2 years, and I've been very outspoken. And the state board in Colorado is they're very representative psychologists. They're very left. They're very feminist, and I don't know if I'm going to face some extra scrutiny there. I guess we'll find out.
Okay, to get a little bit of pressure. Hey, Rollo, if you want to hit the join link and join us in this conversation, if you're free tonight, feel free to chime in. Greg sent a super chat. Thank you. He says, don't have a question or a comment, but just really want to say, keep up the great work, Sean and Rich. Both you guys have made impact on my life. I'm pretty sure many other men as well. Guys, again, the show, Before the Train Wreck, want to help you guys vet for problems, potential train wrecks coming up in your life that your spidey senses are tingling on. Click the link and join the hangout. You can ask a question live, or you can post it in the chat. Always appreciate super chats and everything that comes on. So let me keep an eye out here for any other one. Who hurt you, Sean? Somebody said. Here's a question. What do you guys think about quota at some tech companies for a certain amount of women and men?
Well, my daughter is 12 and she has absolutely no interest in computers or technology, but I've got her in the other room chained to her computer, learning how to program so that, we can serve the feminist imperative here and make sure that she's a programmer, whether or not she wants to do it. And the whole thing's just ridiculous. Like, why this notion that men and women have to do exactly the same things to have the same opportunities or to have equality of opportunities? That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, there was a piece of legislation I think they passed in California recently that have mandated a certain number of women to be on boards of directors.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard about that. I think that was about a year ago or last summer.
Yeah. Where was that?
Yeah. I don't know, it was in California. So
Yes, it was.
there was
California.
some response articles that were posted as a result of that, where companies were hinting or indicating that they might be leaving the state. I mean, there's all kinds of layers and problems that are put in place for businesses and corporations with taxation, hiring quotas. You got to have a certain number of women on the board. And what people need to get is that for a strong and healthy society, now, when I say people that impose these policies and beliefs, the legislators that force companies to comply to certain rules and regulations, you need to understand that you have to put the best person in that role. And the best person for that role might have boy parts in their pants, or they might have girl parts in their pants. But it shouldn't be forced upon the corporation or any body to put a woman in a role that may not want to be in a role or may not even be qualified to be in that role. We had that happen when Justin Trudeau became prime minister. I know most of you guys watch from the States, but when he put his cabinet together, so, the cabinetry set up here in Canada, they've got like a minister of defense, a minister of agriculture, a minister of immigration, so and everything. And I can't remember what the ratio was, but something like 21 or 22% of cabinet ministers were female. But he made sure that he had 50% of his cabinet either female and visible minority. And when he was asked why he did that by a reporter publicly, his response was, "It's 2015." I mean, do you want the right person in the role, or do you want gender quotas imposed on you? Because what happens is when buildings burn down and there's a firefighter that's been put into the crew that may not have the physical strength to carry somebody down the stairs because of gender quotas or something like that, people start dying. Like, you start having problems with, scenarios like that.
Yeah, and this is where feminism really shows its authoritarian streak, when they start telling people what they're allowed to do and what they're allowed to think and what professions they should have.
Yeah. I mean, like, one of the cabinet ministers was so young too. I can't remember what her age was, but she was so young. Like, she looked like she just finished school. There was a question here. Somebody wrote, where did it go? You're going to have to help me out with the questions, Sean. I didn't put it on slow mode, so these things are popping in quickly.
Yeah, they are.
Just scrolling back up here, guys. It's a lot easier if you join us in the Hangout, guys, if you have questions. If you don't want your video on, just put it on, audio only. Super easier that way. Did Steve from accounting hurt you? If it's not Steve from accounting, it's Kevin, the VP of sales, fellas. You never know who it might be.
Someone said, Mary Lee White said, "I've never met a closet feminist. It's been very apparent when a woman is a feminist. So how does one date and marry a feminist and then act like they were blindsided by it?" Yeah, I think that's true. I think you don't have to spend very much time with someone who has a radical ideology, whatever it is, before that radical ideology starts showing up in conversations.
Here's a question. Somebody said, "Coop, what about when you first meet a chick and she states, 'I don't want to be hurt again'?" How would you take that, Sean?
I don't know what that means. I don't want to be hurt again.
I've heard that a lot. When I was out dating after I got divorced, I don't want to be hurt again. And my understanding was, I guess they felt like a victim or maybe taken advantage of, or they gave their heart to the Chad who kind of didn't really give her what she wanted. So she's relying on hurt, victimization. I think it kind of if I could sum it up, to me anyway, it sounds like a victim mentality, right? Like, you got to take ownership for yourself. So it's like, you only let yourself become hurt, right? If you want to be a victim, you're going to be a victim, sort of thing. So it's not a good sign if somebody opens up the conversation with, "I don't want to be hurt again," sort of thing, in my view anyway.
Yeah, I guess another way to say that would be, I don't want to have another learning experience, because a person with an internal locus of control is going to view every injury as a learning experience.
Right. That's a much better way to sum it up. Thank you. Rollo says, "It means you're not the alpha I was hoping to bang on my rebound." Yeah. Okay.
Yes, that's possible.
Let me hit that join link again for you guys. Come on, guys, join us in here.
Yeah, don't be shy.
Yeah, last time we had what happens? People pile in the last like 30 minutes, and then they don't get a chance to ask their questions.
Yeah, I've noticed it a few times. People will hang back and then they all pile in at once. And I was thinking, well, it's probably hard to be the first one to ask the question. So maybe let's start with the second question, and that'll solve that problem.
Yeah. Scrolling back up to get the other ones here. Interesting. Wow, not a lot of people have a lot to ask about on this topic in general, eh?
Yeah, I
There's
think
got to
it's
be some experiences to share, though. Like that guy that shared that experience about that friend of his in school, right? With the girl that kind of Me Too'd him.
yeah, I'd like to hear some guys' experiences with this because that's part of this too. Is like we're trying to help other guys avoid train wrecks. So if you've got an experience and you dodged a train wreck, let us know what it was. But I think that this is such a cut and dried topic for guys who are in the know that there's not a whole lot of subtlety to discuss. Like as soon as that feminism rears its head, okay, game over.
Yeah. I don't know that there's any good form of it. It had its good, like, I've been listening to this book, Marriage, by Stephanie Kuntz, and she's kind of going through the 1800s. And let me just get the subtitle. Marriage, a History is what it's titled. Author is Stephanie Kuntz. Really, really interesting read. And she spent, the better part of the last two chapters that I've been going through on the topic of feminism and the origin, in the late 1700s and the 1800s, and how basically the notion of love was added to marriage as the major component, and they wanted to abandon the notion of the partnership, the patriarchy, the man as the head of the household. I thought this all started in the 1900s. I didn't realize that this has been going on for a couple hundreds a year. Like this is a slow moving train that's got like this much traction now. Did you know that, Sean?
Yeah, I know it's been around for quite a while. I'm not a historian with feminism, but
yeah,
it's been around.
Yeah, it's been going around for a while, and it's the origin really was to add love to the notion of marriage, because there was a lot of conversation going on where women were tired of marrying men out of convenience or out of need, because if they didn't, they just wouldn't do well in the world. And back in those days, a couple hundred years ago, before we had jobs and cars and trains and all sort of stuff like this, like we do today, people were specialists, and you had a cobbler, a guy that made shoes, and his wife would help out with the things that she was good at, and rearing the kids and taking certain things to the market and unloading them and getting a little bit of money for it, sort of thing. But I'm like, the notion of what it has become today, it's a very interesting evolution. I haven't done a book summary in a while, and I think I'm going to do a book summary on this one once I've gone through. In fact, we've got this as a book club item for my men's community. It's on the list for next month.
So Rollo typed feminism as a hate movement. It's also a hat movement with the pussy hats, but feminism is a hate movement. It is definitely a hate movement at this point. I wonder if Rollo thinks it has always been a hate movement.
It's certainly relied on oppression. That's for sure. There's no doubt about that. Or the implied impression, notion that women are oppressed. But it's moved back and forth, throughout time. Like there was a segment within the 40s and 50s and early 60s where feminism looked like it was dying off, actually. I saw a question here. How do I keep damaged women away? How do you keep damaged women away? Well, if you're damaged yourself, I think you're going to be a magnet for damaged people too, right? If you're a world-class man that's kind of chasing excellence and working on your purpose, you're going to have a hard time accepting damaged people in your life. You just won't make any room for them.
Yeah, and in this kind of conversation, it's really easy to devolve into how to just focusing exclusively on how you keep the wrong people away. But really, the other side of that question is how do you bring the right people into your circle?
Yeah, so let's answer that. So how do you bring the right people in?
You look for clarity, maturity, and stability.
Clarity, maturity, and stability. So what does clarity look like?
Clarity is that ability I was talking about earlier to identify what's really going on and deal with what's really going on rather than what's going on in your head and solve problems. Maturity is just having some basic coping skills and being able to work through problems. And then stability gets into questions of mental health. And I say in my book, mental health problems are not a rule out. The way somebody handles mental health is a rule in or a rule out.
Yeah, you're right. Corey said, talking more about feminism. Thanks for the super chat, Corey, by the way. Talking more about feminism in the workplace is necessary. Lots of train wrecks can happen if you aren't aware of its dangers. Having female bosses, female coworkers, female subordinates, female HR. How do you deal with these things? You have women in the workplace, gentlemen. You're going to have to get used to female nature, understanding it, and how to navigate accordingly. I think that's what the red pill teaches. It's not about chasing women. It's It's about understanding the world as what it really is, not as you've been told that it is. So just understanding female nature. Don't put yourself in an environment as well where you can risk problems with potential feminists, like, you know, having dinner with a feminist, you know, for example, or taking a business trip with a feminist. There were some articles that were put out in the last year after all this Me Too started to happen, where corporations were discouraging men from leaving themselves in environments where they could potentially be Me Too. Who was it? It was Pence. They called it the Pence principle.
Yeah, the Pence rule.
Yeah, the Pence rule. So what did that rule state?
If, as I remember it correctly, I think is essentially don't isolate yourself with a woman.
Yeah.
I'm probably saying that wrong. Maybe somebody can type it in the comments.
Yeah, it's something along that line. I mean, a good buddy of mine who's who's an entrepreneur, he told me this about 4 or 5 years ago, and he learned this lesson from his dad. And rather than expose himself to potential risk or temptation around women, he's a married dude, super exclusive with his wife and everything like that. But he changed his rules so that if he ever had to do any business dealings or transactions with women, he always had somebody else come along with him, preferably a female officer from the company. So if he had to meet with a female from the opposing company, a supplier or vendor or something like that, he always had a female officer of the company attend that meeting, event, dinner, whatever it was. So it's just part and parcel of it. I mean, female nature needs to be understood. It's how you avoid potential problems like this. Alex threw us a super chat there. He says, I'll add to that donation, workplace is the struggle. Thanks for the super chat.
Yeah, and Rollo just typed the Pence rules. Never be alone in a room with a woman who isn't your wife.
Yeah, definitely.
So what does that mean? I'll add to that donation, workplace is the struggle, meaning what?
I think a lot of guys, if I understand this correctly, feel the struggle in the workplace. They get frustrated dealing with female nature. I think they get frustrated with the potential risk to Me Too's. I think they get frustrated with listening to the lectures about patriarchy and feminism, or maybe by the water cooler bullshit about the last episode of The Bachelorette. I'm lucky in the sense that I don't have to work on a day-to-day basis around that. I've structured my life that way, not intentionally. It's just, how I've built it because the way I run my businesses sort of thing. But I can certainly empathize with it. Like there's certain industries, like I know we have people here that work in female dominated industries. I'm not going to mention their names, but they've been on before. There's a couple of guys that are in my community, but they work in female dominated industries, whether it's in government or social services or people that make policies. And it's exhausting and draining. And that's kind of where feminist and liberal values gravitate to. And I get that you want to do the right thing and you want to work in that space, but at the same time, if you withdraw from that space, you also lose the ability to influence that space because you want to avoid the risk. So, I mean, it kind of brings me back to the whole thing, like, where's this toxic feminism thing going? It's getting worse. It's never going to be eradicated. It's going to be a full reset. Like we need something to happen that's going to reset things for us.
Yeah. And the more reasonable people who select themselves out of environments, the more those environments become radicalized and unreasonable.
Correct. And that's a natural progression. I mean, who the hell wants to work in an environment that's that hostile, where maybe they represent 1/3 of the workforce and they're up against odds of 2/3 who they have to basically walk around on eggshells with. So fewer and fewer guys are going to be working in that space because they're discouraged to be there, or they're more betatized. They're like kind of weaker, feminized sort of males that might hold up pieces of paper that says that I'm a male feminist because it's tough, very tough.
Yeah. I'd love to hear from guys that have been in relationships with feminists and how that shook out for them.
Well, I've been in a relationship with a feminist. What do you want to ask?
How'd it work out?
Shit. Shit.
What was the first danger sign that popped up?
She had a bad relationship with her dad. Her dad wifed up her mom, who was a single mom with 3 kids from her prior marriage. I think her mom's first husband died in a plane crash or something like that. And he wifed her up, took care of the kids, put a roof over their head, had another kid. She was the 4th. But there was a lot of allegations about sexual misconduct. I don't know, what was true and what wasn't true. I mean, obviously there's some truth behind it, but had a terrible relationship with him, would not speak to him, never spoke fondly of him. And that was one of the videos that I made early on a couple of years ago about the 3 types of women that you want to avoid dating. And one of them is one with daddy issues, one that doesn't respect men or have a good relationship with her father, simply because if she didn't have a good relationship with her dad growing up and she doesn't value men and masculinity, what makes you think that she's going to value you? What makes you think that there's going to be any glue that holds that relationship together? There's a distinct, there's tons of deception, lots of lies. But anytime something broke or had a moving part that needed to get fixed, or something that, needed a man to deal with, hook up the washer or dryer, get a tree removed from the backyard, guess who had to deal with that shit? Fucking right here. So, there was a lot of declaration of independence and strength and that sort of thing, but the reality was it didn't exist. And it's very unfulfilling to be in a relationship with a chick that does not value you as a man when, people would, I've been called a stand-up guy. I've been called lots of things that lead to masculine strength and virtues. And when you put that into a relationship with a chick and you don't get the ROI, it's fucking exhausting. So that's kind of like the Coles Notes version of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I wonder how many guys out there do that thing that women do where they think they can fix, they can change their partners. And women are notorious for thinking that they can mold a guy into what they want. And I wonder how many guys out there come across a feminist and think, you've done it. You come across a feminist and you think, well, I can show her what, a real man is like, or whatever. I don't know what the thinking would be.
Yeah, it doesn't matter because she doesn't value real men. You could be the manliest, most masculine dude in the world. At some point, she's going to find some way to disparage you or say that you're being toxic. It'll just be manufactured at the point of convenience because that's what feminists do. They rely on the victim mindset. It's far easier to get things done in that area because that's where they play. They play in the emotional.
Yeah. Let's post the link again. See if we can get some guys to call in with this.
Yeah,
I want to hear some stories.
Dropping it in there, guys. Yeah, you can share your stories and join us with them if you want. Troy said, "Do you see any signs of toxic feminism spreading out globally to other non-Western cultures?" Yeah, dude, everywhere. All you got to do is go on social media, follow people in the manosphere, and you'll see them post pictures of Persian women in Iran twerking their ass on a phone pole at some gathering. Like that's not typically what women would do. But they're telling women to take off their burqas, whatever they call them, and behave in a more provocative fashion. That's kind of a solid example of that. I saw that last week. I think Roosh posted it. Got somebody to join us. Gene, if you want to unmute yourself, you can fire away.
Yeah, so you guys wanted to hear about some crazy story about a feminist woman.
Yeah, go ahead.
There was that chick's like 3 years ago. I was dating, and after a while, when I became red pill aware, she started to use the shaming tactic because I wasn't taking her shit anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I realized that I had to walk away from. Like she had a big daddy issues. Like her dad wasn't really her dad, and
what did the daddy issues look like? So people get an idea of what to spot.
The dad was pretty non-present. Like her biological dad, she never knew who he was because her mother was a feminist who got knocked up and whatever, and then she married out her other dad that isn't her biological dad, and even him wasn't really present in the house. He was pretty always at work, and like basically the mother was like always what was with her, and pretty much just brainwash her with all those feminist things.
Yeah, it's never a good sign if a woman's been raised by a feminist single mother. I get there's scenarios where there's runaway dad sort of thing, but I think more often than not, the narrative these days is more along the lines of she doesn't need a man, or she ran him off or something along that line. I mean, most men that I come across, maybe it's just this fear, the stuff that I work on. I mean, they want to be a part of their kids' lives. They're not trying to be removed from it. But often the narrative, then becomes, well, he was a loser, or he was a deadbeat, or he was incompetent, or something like that. And if you're told that growing up as a girl your entire life, that your father was loser and incompetent and irresponsible, you're not going to have a very high opinion of men. So it's certainly something to watch out for. 100%. Yeah.
So Gene, what did the shaming tactics look like?
Well, she told me like I wasn't a man anymore, because before I was more like blue pill condition beta, more kind of guy, and I was doing everything she wanted, going to the movie, going to restaurants, everything, and then I started to stop doing those kind of things because I realized that that wasn't what exactly could get her, or should have get her. But because I think for her I changed, maybe she believed that I had something, and she started to talk down to me because I wasn't taking her shit anymore.
Yeah, that's what usually happens, is like, you're not a real man, is one of the lyrics that I think you heard there, right?
Yeah.
So she would talk down to you. Would she say other things other than you're not a man?
Well, not like how could I say that? Like I'm not the one that she knew and those kind of stuff. Like I shouldn't be acting a certain way. I should be acting another way.
Mm-hmm.
So she was noticing that you changed, which is a fair observation because you had changed, right?
Yeah, I did.
And to try to get you back to behaving the way she wanted you to behave, she was shaming you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's exclusive to toxic feminism. I think it's a coping mechanism that a lot of women use to try to convince you to behave in a certain way that benefits them. But when you start hearing sound bites about you not being a real man, that's always questionable. Like, why would she say something like that?
Yeah.
The lady that I dated a long time ago that had a really strongly feminist family, there was the same type of thing where there was this man, I guess a father to one of the kids or something, the man that was in the family, and the way they spoke about him, he was just worse than Hitler, and he abandoned everybody and left everybody to fend for themselves. And of course, at the time I was wondering, well, I wonder what he would say about them. But there does seem to be this common theme with women who turn out to be very feminist, that there's some guy in their life that has really let them down in a big way, or they think he's let them down.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sorry, did you have anything else to add to that, Gene?
Well, this girl, exactly like she had a guy that she dated the year before I started to see her, and he basically was the guy like that pump and dump, and she didn't really accept it, and she was pretty much always dragging about it. That's one of the other thing that I start to stop, like I was literally telling like to shut the fuck up about her ex because I didn't want to hear about it.
Yeah,
something that I did
it's definitely
before.
a boundary that you got to set.
Yeah.
100%. All right, cool. Yeah, thanks for adding that. Gonna let you go. And if there's anybody else that wants to chime in, the link's there in the chat. There's a question here from MT, and he said, if all women think like that today, is there any good way to get married? What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I really wrestle with this marriage question because I honestly can't recommend it. But I also know that there are guys out there who want to have families. It's a respectable goal. And we know that with children, the best arrangement is two parents, intact family. It's not the only way to do it, but it's the best way to do it for children. So my thought on it is, if that's really important to you to have children, then yeah, for the children's sake, maybe you decide to take this risk. But otherwise, I don't really see how the risk is justified these days.
Yeah, there's a lot of ego investments in belief. Richard, can you post just the link? No other words. I think people might be having a problem with the link. Let me try that.
Yeah, somebody commented a little bit ago about having some trouble.
Okay, so here is the link only. Close that. Yeah, the interesting thing about marriage is the origin of marriage has nothing to do with love. It was more towards the acquisition of in-laws. The origin of marriage was really, I have certain skills and talents. You and your family have certain skills and talents. If we get wifed up, then there's going to be some benefits to both of us as far as the acquisition of assets, lands, political influence, that sort of thing. It had nothing to do with love at all. Like, that's a modern thing that only happened in the last couple hundred years. For thousands, tens of thousands of years, it really had to do with the convenience of acquiring in-laws. Probably, number two behind that would be, raising kids. But I mean, there was no single mothers back then. Like, if you were a single mother, you were a train wreck. Like, you were literally outcast from society. Like, if you were a single mother, you'd have to give your kid up for adoption, or your parents would have to take care of you. I mean, they didn't even have safe and effective abortions back then. So to get married in today's world, like, why would you want to do it? Like, I would ask the question, why, first of all? If it's because you think you're going to have easy access to convenient and easy sex, the answer is hell no. I don't know many married people that say, well, I get laid a hell of a lot more now that I've gotten married. The opposite is often true. Is it to raise kids because you want to pass on your, genetic biome or whatever it is? That's one way to look at it, but you'd want to do some pretty significant vetting. And even then, at the end of the day, there's no guaranteed safe way to do it. I mean, I've had people present all kinds of scenarios in which they would like to apply to their marriage or to the other side, or certain shit tests that they want to put her through before they get married. It's like, I can poke holes through everything. I can find flaws in every one of your angles and approaches to try to nullify the risks associated with marriage in the Western world today, and how it can really royally fuck men over on the exit if you have to untie the knot. So you have to take on the risk with some vetting, some clear vetting. Sean's book is very good. Rollo's first two books are very good for vetting those things. The links are always pinned in the description of my video. My book will be done later on this year, which will be comprehensive and include a lot of the core tenets that I've learned over the last couple of years, while adding my own experiences and some stuff that really hasn't been talked about lately as well. But I'll probably have a chapter on that specifically if you want to vet for a long-term relationship, even though I'm vehemently opposed to it. Hey, Joe, what's up? Joe came and then Joe left. Here, I'll post that join link again.
So, Rich, what do you think about marrying if you want to have children?
Well, it certainly comes with risk. I have no interest in it at this age and this stage of my life, but I get it. I mean, I did it at 35, 34. I think it was 32 or so that I'd met my ex-wife at the time. But it's just far too risky. I mean, you'd really have to want to have kids. And that would have to be really important. Like a guy like Tanner Guzzi, who's, Mormon, he's got a Mormon wife. They subscribe, vehemently to certain values, very, very, community-based around that sense. I think that is probably one of the safest environments to do it in. But even then, at the end of the day, his wife could, change her mind in 2 years from now, just for whatever reason she chooses to, and completely run him through the divorce machine.
She could. And I agree that the community makes a difference, because it would be harder for her to change her mind and just put him through the divorce meat grinder, because she'd have to pay a price within her community.
Correct.
So she'd have to be pretty motivated. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's certain ways that you can limit the risk and the exposure for sure. I'm going to break it down in my book. Somebody asked in the comments, can I pre-order it? No, I'm not going to do pre-sales. I'm not going to do Indiegogos or anything like that. I'll let you guys know when to be available. Joe, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I'm allowed to join the chat because I just clicked on the link randomly.
Yeah, it's to ask questions though. So if you have an experience to share around today's topic, a scenario that you want to vet to potentially avoid a train wreck, is that what you wanted to do?
No, I'm just a guy from Quebec who regularly listens to your show, and I click on the link randomly. My apologies if that's the wrong.
No problem. I'll just let you go. So guys, if you're going to click that link, you want to join with a question or maybe an experience to share that would add some value to the broadcast. Clavius, am I pronouncing that right?
Just call me Andrew. That's fine.
Okay, Andrew.
I have a situation here. I ride bikes. I believe you did the same or do the same.
When you say bikes, you mean motorcycles or bicycles?
Yeah. No.
Both?
Motorbikes.
Okay.
Yeah, both.
I think you got another problem. I think you got your laundry going too, right?
No.
I'm just kidding, dude. Just because you're not wearing a shirt.
Yeah, it's 1 a.m. here.
Okay.
Fire
away.
Last weekend, I went for a ride with some friends, and we ended up with a meeting for girls. That's a bad idea for me. I don't think I should be hanging around with lots of girls riding bikes. And the conversation there was, girls can do what men can do. What's your opinion on this?
I'm not sure why that's a red flag. So you're riding your motorcycles with your bros.
Yeah.
And some girls show up at the coffee shop, the cafe, the bar on their bikes, and you start talking.
And then we went to another place where it was a meeting of girls. And the ambient there was, girls can do it. We can do it. Well, you can, but why make that? Well, you don't need to say it. Just do it.
Yeah. Well, I used to ride bikes for about 13 years, I think.
Just do it.
When I was 17 or so. I used to ride bikes for. I'm just going to mute you guys. When you join on, make sure you mute the actual YouTube broadcast so you can hear it this way instead. Otherwise, you get the feedback. And I dated a couple of girls that rode motorcycles just because they were around all the time, at the cafes, the coffee shops. We used to ride down here in Toronto. There's some ramps that would basically form this racetrack. And probably for every 100 guys, there was like 5 girls. Like there wasn't a lot.
Yeah.
But they're very masculine. They're not super feminine. They're trying to be one of the guys. They're not going to ride on the back of your bike. Like they're not going to ride bitch. That's what we used to call it, riding bitch. It was riding on the back of the bike. They want to ride their own bike and try to hang out with the guys. And if I'm being honest, they didn't have the skills. They didn't have the fast bikes. They were super conservative with their riding. They were always at the back of the pack. But they still walked around like they were part of the guys, right? And I didn't find it that attractive, if I'm being honest. So my feedback, just as you're asking, I just, hang out with your buddies, right? I mean, if you like to motorcycle or if you like to fish or you like to go hunting, there's certain things, and I think it's healthy for guys to do them with their friends rather than, bring women in tow, right?
Well, I did that before. Not again. I won't do it again.
What do you think, Sean?
Rolo posted this comment, men and women are different. And we're in this really bizarre time where that's a controversial statement.
Yeah.
It's okay. Men and women can be different. You just said, Rich, I'm not attracted to women who act like men, or, I'm paraphrasing, but most men are not attracted to women who act like men. And most women are not attracted to men who act like women. Correct. But we've got to this weird place where everybody has to be equal and everybody has to be doing all the same stuff. And it's, God, how boring is that? Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have friends that are going to be okay with having the girls in tow on their little Ninja 250s or their shitty 500 V-twin entry level.
That's cute though. That's like a girl bike, right? So that's
yeah, it's like a scooter.
It's
like cute. A Vespa, but it's kind of like hyped up a little bit more.
Right.
But I mean, like if you're out with the boys, like, you want to be with the boys, right? Sort of thing. So I think that you should make the intent clear. Look, we're not here to, babysit these kids, with their 250 Ninjas. That's just me, though.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
All right.
Maybe I made the wrong choice last weekend.
No, I think that you should set the intent clearly when you guys go out on your bikes together. Like, what are we doing today? We're going to tear up the canyons. We're going to ride the ramps. We're going to go for a coffee, right? And I mean, you want these masculinized women kind of like milling around in the background. Some guys might be into that. Others won't. I never found a lot of interest in it, to be honest with you. I mean, I dated a couple of women that rode bikes, but they were like dudes, and it just wasn't that attractive.
No, not at all.
Right? You find the same thing? You don't find them that attractive either?
No, I don't. They walk like a man. They talk like a man. Short hair, some.
Yeah, they're wearing clothes like a dude. I mean, there's a, there's a lot of fantasy when it came to sport bikes and women on sport bikes, and you'll see certain videos, memes, maybe things on social media and Instagram and stuff like that, where there's a smoking hot chick wearing like a helmet and like, thong shorts and like a tank top, maybe with no bra, with high heels. But that's not the reality of women on motorcycles. I mean, I don't know how she figured out how to ride it because I never met those girls. It was always like the more masculinized girls that were on bikes at the time. But
Yeah, I see that. I see that.
Anyway,
I see the central issue here as male spaces. Like, it's okay to have a bunch of guys go out and have a guys day out on the bike, you know.
Yeah.
But again, there's another controversial statement these days.
Correct. Correct. All right. Thanks for hopping on here. I'm gonna let you go.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks.
Jabir, I'm going to get to you in 1 sec. Just want to hit this super chat real fast. Adam says it's normal to feel anger, loneliness when you swallow the red pill. I feel like I'm in a tiny minority. No, dude, that's actually more of the majority. I think more people, when they get into this sort of content, they get what's called red pill rage. There's 5 steps of unplugging. I think if you go to Google, or maybe if Rollo's still on, you can post the essay that you wrote on that. But it's just part of the unplugging process. Is you feel like you've been lied to, what you've been told is true isn't true. It's it's a manufactured stretch of the truth. It's just part of dealing with that trauma, so you can get to the point where you're like, oh, I get it now, and you kind of understand it from that point. But thanks for the super chat, dude. Appreciate it. Jabir, I think you're on next. If you want to unmute yourself.
Hey, what's up, guys? How you guys doing?
Yeah, man. Good, thanks.
Hey, don't have any crazy stories to share, but I wanted to kind of get your advice on a particular situation that I'm going through. Just got out of a painful marriage. Just got a divorce right now. And 5-year marriage, man. 5-year marriage. And the funny thing is, I'm only 25 at the moment.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, so I got married when I was, end of 19, about to turn 20.
Mm-hmm.
5 years. Had a kid, and yeah, marriage just ended. So to summarize everything real quick, I wanted to ask you guys about child support. So we kind of had an informal agreement via WhatsApp and kind of in person, where I said, okay, you know what, $500 per month is what I can afford, what I can do every single month, and that's what I'm going to do. She said, sure, no problem. And a couple weeks later, she's like, oh, you only have him. So right now the custody agreement is I have him every Saturday, Sunday. Mm-hmm. And she has him Monday to Friday, 3-year-old boy. Mm-hmm. Right? And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, $500 isn't enough. You need to up that. You need to double it to $1,000. And I'm like,
yeah, where do you live?
Edmonton, Alberta.
Yeah. So the child support tables, what do they say?
I haven't really looked at it in depth, but when I kind of skimmed over it, like some of them said like 11% of total income, some said 17%.
So
right?
there's a calculator online, child support Alberta. I'm just gonna type it in here. Can you give me your income? Or should we like 150,000?
Oh no, I mean I'm my own business owner, so I write my own checks, whatever, depending on what I need. So on a month-to-month basis, I probably take out about 6,000 from the business.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. General information: calculate child support, spouse. Oh, this is a new calculator. This is the one they had when I was using it. Spouse name, annual employment income. So you're doing about $6,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Is what I pay myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And mothers will always argue, well, you should be paying yourself more, or she can take you to court and have the judge argue that you're not paying yourself enough based on the business and certain scenarios tied into that.
Yeah, she actually tried to pull that based on my business revenue, which is a lot higher, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
And guys, this is a prime example of why I constantly tell men to book a coaching call with me before you get divorced. Why is it taking it that way? Yeah, I'm just punching the number.
I don't want to make it seem like like right now, like the in-laws, like we all have a good relationship. It wasn't too bitter, like some of the stories that I'm hearing on the channel and stuff like that. But it's just, I don't know, like you said, man, in the beginning when I was getting into the whole red pill awareness, kind of all this information that you're putting out, I was like, yo, this guy is talking like, I don't believe half the stuff this guy is saying, And then as I got more into the content, I'm like, yo, Richard is really talking about like some good stuff. And it started to make sense as I watched more and more videos of what you were talking about. And it's
based on what you're looking at, I mean, you're looking anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000 a month, depending on how much it is that she's going to claim that you should be paying yourself. So you should never leave the matrimonial home until you have a global separation / parenting arrangement in one agreement that clearly defines what the custody schedule looks like. Ideally, you want to share custody. because if she's working, it's going to reduce the amount of obligation that you're going to pay for child support. Like, you know, for a 4-year-old kid or a 5-year-old kid, maybe it's costing you $500 a month. Like maybe that's what you were spending during the course of the marriage, right? With diapers, food, clothing, maybe some extracurriculars. They put them in kiddie soccer and stuff like that. But as soon as she realizes that, you know, because she has a conversation with one of her girlfriends and her girlfriend says, oh, girl, did you know that you could be getting a lot more if you plug in his income in the child support tables? And he may not be paying himself enough. He might be paying his mom part of the income to reduce his taxable burden, blah, blah, blah. And then she's going to come at you with, well, your $500 is not enough, my friend. You need to pay me X. So it's incredibly important, you know, before you just untie the knot and kind of go your separate ways and think, oh, I got some relief now. Yeah. To do some preliminary planning to make sure that you don't end up in a scenario where you kind of agree to $500 a month, you kind of go your separate ways, and that goes for a few months. And then she realizes, well, now that I've had the child Monday to Friday and I'm the primary caregiver and that's the status quo, I think I'm going to come back at Jabir and say, you owe me X amount of dollars now.
So what does that process look like? Speaking with an attorney, speaking with a counselor? What is it?
What does that mean? You can't do much to change it right now because the status quo is you've got the child on Saturdays and Sundays. So all she has to do is there's a form in Canada. Well, there was one in Ontario anyway called the 13-1, which would force each side to declare to the other what your annual income is. It's got to be proven with your notice of assessment. And they base the child support payments based on the table. You can't contract out of it. Like you can't contract out of things like child support. A lot of people, when they do a prenup, they'll try to put something in there like we're going to share custody or there'll be no child support, but you can't contract out of that. And the mother can always go back to whatever the child support tables say and compel you to pay that. And if you haven't been paying it for 2 years and you guys have lived separately for 2 years, the judge can impose 2 years of back penalties back on you to force you to pay that difference, even though you don't have the money.
Wow.
So as it stands right now, you need to do damage control. Like this is train wreck sort of stuff.
Wow. 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 Cool. So I got that. The second question that I had, I'm not too sure if there's someone after me, if there's a rush or anything, but I wanted to ask this.
Somebody left, so go ahead.
Yeah. So the second question that I had was, I'm looking to get back into school. Obviously, I'm a business owner. My business is going pretty well. Eventually, I want to package it, sell it, get back into school, med school, and study ophthalmology, right? But a deeper part of me kind of wants an educated woman, a woman that works maybe in the same field as me. But looking back at my previous marriage, my ex-wife was pretty educated, but I'm not going to deny the fact that the times that she was staying at home, our relationship was the smoothest, right? When she was taking care of the kids, she wasn't working and I was doing all the money making. It was smooth sailing. The second she started working at the hospital and things, you know, she started working full-time, part-time, it's like, you know, she would be frustrated. It wouldn't be as smooth. So I wanted to kind of get your guys' opinion on that.
I have a note here on my phone from James Cameron. He's a filmmaker. And the quote says, being attracted to strong, independent women has the downside that they're strong, independent women. They inherently don't need you. He's talking about his 5 marriages. So you just have to understand what you're getting into when you know, wife up a strong, independent woman. You know, you can end up in, you know, scenarios just like that. I mean, the downside of it is, you know, if you marry down, you know, if you're a entrepreneur, you're making $200 grand a year, $150,000 a year, and you wife up somebody that's making $25,000, $30,000 a year, working a few days a week doing hair, you can be financially, you know, responsible to continue their lifestyle at the $150,000 a year line in the sand sort of thing. I feel like I'm monopolizing this conversation.
No, not at all. The part of it, you know, the legal stuff that you gave is good, and that's way above my pay grade. I don't know anything about that stuff. But Jabir, is it important to you to be married?
Yeah, I would say I'm a pretty religious guy. Whole sex before marriage thing, that was a whole no-go for me. So, by the way, I was not married. I probably should have disclosed this in the beginning. I was not married legally. So
but
when
you still lived in a way that the state would view as a marriage. So the rules are still going to, you know, apply to you because you guys lived that way for 5 years, right?
Oh, wow. I did not know that. I thought once you have the marriage document legally signed, that's when you guys are considered. That's when
no, dude, that's just a party. That's just the party and the ceremony to sign the piece of paper at the, you know, religious event. I think in Ontario, it's 2 years. I mean, if you lived with somebody common law for 2 years, the state views you as, you know, as married. And if you have a kid together, even a year into the relationship, you're still responsible for child support based on the family law tables. Let me ask you this question so you can share some experience, because we got 5 minutes left before we're going to wrap it up. What lesson could you share with people watching this right now so that they don't make a mistake that you made?
Well, first of all, don't get married when you're super young. Got married when I was 19, still had, was wet behind the ears still, like, rushed into it. Again, I'm not here to talk smack about my wife. Like I said, I have a very good relationship with all the in-laws, pretty cordial relationship with my ex-wife, but just know yourself, man. I think I did not know myself. I did not know my values, what I was looking for. And I was it lasted 5 years. And majority of the time I was just like, yo, I'm going to be in this because I'm already in it. I'm going to make the best of it. I knew pretty early on that I was like, damn, I made a mistake, right? Without being disrespectful to her.
At what point did you realize that it was a mistake?
Oh, man. Asking them deep questions, Rich.
I'm putting you on the spot, dude.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I would probably say year 2, man. Year 2 before our child, right? But then I was like, is this just me? Is this like, me not being humble enough? Because obviously I'm a religious dude, right? And a lot of people are like, don't listen to the whispers of the devil, like I'm really traditional. I come from a really traditional family, right? So I was like, you know what, Jabber, be humble, be the best version of yourself that you can be the best husband you can be, suck it up, whatever issues that you have. But I would say about year 2. Okay. But because I was so afraid of divorce, not because of the fact that it's a divorce, but because my father had a history of divorcing women, I'm like, yo, I'm not going to be that type of dude, because I felt the pain, right, of my mother raising me as a single mother. I'm like, I'm never going to do that to my son. And because of that, I think that kept me in the marriage longer than I should have been, especially when my son was born. I'm like, now that my son is born, oh, I'm done. I'm in this forever, So
Sean, do you have any questions that Jabir might want to ask of himself going forward?
Yeah, just my thought is, since you're so marriage minded, it's going to be really important for you to take care of this relationship with your child's mother, and all of the legal considerations that Rich was talking about. I know nothing about. It's just not my world. I'm usually dealing with things before they fall apart. And hopefully they don't fall apart. But I can tell you, among people who do fall apart, there's things that you really want to avoid with your ex, and they are ambiguity and hard feelings. And it sounds like you said you have a congenial relationship with her. That's good. So you want to keep that going. You want to make sure that you walk that line where you're keeping her happy, but you're not becoming subservient to her, because that's going to backfire on you horribly. So you've got to find that line where you're just minimizing hard feelings. It sounds like you're pretty good at that. And the other part is ambiguity. It sounds like there's a lot of ambiguity in the agreements that the two of you have made. And I think that you'd be doing yourself a favor to resolve that as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
What do you think the best way is for him to do that?
Well, I think some of the strategies you were talking about, like putting some numbers to things and, getting things on paper. What are your thoughts on reducing the ambiguity?
Well, I mean, the problem is you could get some clarity and, agree to give her $900 a month or something like that if you want to deal with the numerical value of that part. But she could always, if she figures out that you should be paying her $3,000, she could always change that on you. So your best bet is to just Google Alberta child support tables, plug in your income, and let it spit out the number and figure out what that is. I mean, that would be the maximum that you would be liable for. Yeah. It's of course going to be more than what the child needs to live, because that's how corrupt family law is in Canada. Yeah. You could be paying $3,000 when her cost is $500. It's not going to go to the kid. It's going to go to handbags and shoes. It's not often that the child sees all of that money, right? So just, figure out what it is that you can do. I mean, you got a responsibility to the kid. You want to take ownership for it. But navigate, with your eyes wide open going forward, so you don't do this again and go for round 2 with, 2 baby mamas that you're not with anymore, right?
Oh, hell no, man, for sure. I'm going to be reading all the books.
Yeah, so unplug, man. Just be careful. Thank you.
Definitely. Thanks, guys.
Okay,
good luck, Javier.
Thank you.
All right, we'll let that go. I'm going to wrap it up now. It's coming up on the 90-minute mark. 2 years, eh? It's interesting. I asked him that because your book mentioned, I mean, one of the big takeaways I got out of your book was you certainly want to vet for a longer period of time. And he didn't figure out that he made a mistake until the 2-year mark. And I'm assuming because he was with her for 5 years and the kid's 5, they probably had an early pregnancy. I mean, there's not much you can do about that, but it's just, proof in the pudding with what you were saying in your book. Give it some time if you want to vet somebody accordingly.
Yeah, 2 years seems to be kind of the magic number for a lot of people. That's enough time that your brain chemistry has gone back to baseline and you're seeing the world with some accuracy, and enough time for her to show what her true colors are in some real life situations.
Yeah, totally. Let me just grab my Clarity link here before I wrap up the broadcast. If you guys want to, if you guys need coaching for any, this kind of stuff like this, I know it sucks, but I mean, when it comes to divorce, you can really minimize screwing up your life by taking some precautionary steps before you untie the knot. So it's clarity.fm/Richard Cooper. That's one area that I shine in when it comes to coaching through the divorce, either planning for it as you're going through it, or post dealing with some coping skills. I'm doing a broadcast actually Wednesday night. I had to postpone it last week on navigating divorce for men in my men's community. So if you want to get in on that, you'd be better off to sign up now rather than afterwards, because you get access to asking the question live. Otherwise, you have to watch the recording. But Facebook was down last Wednesday. All of Facebook products were down. WhatsApp, Instagram, everything was off last Wednesday. But it'll be up for this Wednesday night when I go live. Any closing comments, Sean?
Yeah, just on your business and your coaching community, that I was talking to a guy recently who's going through a kind of an ugly divorce, and it's about to get a lot uglier because there's ambiguity and there's hard feelings. But my biggest fear for him, and I was telling him this, was that he's going to get isolated with these problems. And getting yourself surrounded with some other guys who've been through it, can strategize with you, give you a little bit of support, man. It's a very important thing to do.
Yeah, definitely agree. It's tough, man. It's one of the hardest things that any man can go through. It's weird because every time I always think about the shit that I went through, it's like you just kind of get like tightened up and sort of thing, like those old triggers kind of happen again. It's weird. I guess it never kind of leaves you. But yeah, thanks for watching tonight's show. Sean, thanks for joining me. We're good for next Monday night, 8 o'clock?
Yes.
You're around, so that'll be the 25th of March. Keep an eye on the subscription feed. We'll figure out a topic. If you guys have a topic suggestion, post it in the comments below, and maybe we'll consider it. But yeah, before the train wreck episode number 11, we're wrapping up. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Rich.